All rise. The Alachua County Court of the 8th Judicial Circuit of Florida is now open in ceremonial session. The Honorable Chief Judge Mark W. Moseley presiding. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and Invocation.
Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Would you bow with me, please? We bow at this time in thanksgiving, acknowledging the true and living God, our Creator, who has created all people equal and bestowed upon each person the dignity of his image, and endowed them with unalienable rights, including the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We praise you, the giver of all good gifts. Today we join in our petition to ask your blessing upon Judge George M. Wright as we celebrate the investiture of authority placed upon him by the people of the state of Florida, that he might lawfully guard and secure their rights as circuit judge. As he repeats his oath of office today, in your presence and in the presence of this company, we ask that you would give him wisdom and strength of character to faithfully fulfill the covenant that he's making with you and the people of this state, striving to be a minister for their good and the good of all mankind. And may those of us who are present who have taken this oath be reminded of our solemn vow. Help us to be faithful servants of justice for all. To you alone be the glory. In the name of your anointed one we pray. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Let me thank everyone for your presence today for this great proceeding. This is my honor to preside. This is my first time to preside as Chief Judge over an investiture. I noted that I should have paid closer attention in the past. I think all but one of my previous judges that are on the bench, I had the privilege to be present. And like a law exam, I was thinking I should have listened more carefully during those times. I want to thank Chief Detective Lance Yaeger for opening court. And of course, the Honorable Clovis Watson Jr., our Alachua County Sheriff, for leading our pledge. This is really a great occasion. It's not only a wonderful occasion for the judge that we're here to both honor and have the opportunity to learn a great deal more about Judge Wright as an individual. I find these very stirring occasions for me to hear people speak about the responsibility that will be incumbent upon him. As a judge, it's always a reminder of to me, and I think to all my fellow judges, of the importance of the role that we play in our community. And it's a very important reminder. It also gives our community an opportunity to learn more about the judge, broader than maybe we may have seen just in court or his professional life. We get to hear about other parts of his life that give us more insight into him as a person, and that's a good thing to be able to do. And I want to thank everyone who is present here. I think we may have some overflow as well of individuals in other places, and I understand we may be streaming on YouTube. So to the millions of people out there who have, I'm sure, tuned in, we welcome you as well. I want to take just a moment before we get on with the proceedings to acknowledge some of the local dignitaries who have come to be present with us today, that we certainly appreciate your being here at this occasion. As I've said before, our Sheriff, Clovis Watson Jr., is here with us today. Thank you. Also, the Undersheriff, Joel DeCourcy, has come to be with us, and we thank you. Our State Attorney, Brian Kramer, is going to be speaking as well as with us today. Mayor Gib Kerper is with us also. Thank you for being here. And our Commissioner Shirley Green Brown present as well. There may be some others that I have missed. I hope not. We try to be sure we acknowledge all of those who come to be present. We appreciate those of you who are here, who are part of our sister branches of government as we work in unity together for the good of our community. Thank you for being here. Of course, we have a number of our judges that are present, and we want to acknowledge those who are here today. And I want to go down the list, and this will be my big test here, even though I have something of a list here. They're wearing masks, so I can't really tell for sure who I'm speaking of, but we have our senior judges, beginning with Judge Amir Buck-Curtin is present. We're glad. Also, I see Judge Sieg wasn't able to make it, but Judge Jim Nylon is here today. He would normally be up here. I offered him the spot, but he respectfully declined. But we are glad that he has returned and appreciate his being with us. Judge Monica Brasington, one of our circuit judges now currently serving, and Judge Denise Ferrero seated beside her. See Judge David Kreiner. Back on the next row, Judge Phil Penna, Judge Donna Keim, Judge Suzanne Wilson-Bullard, Judge Gloria Walker, and Judge Craig DeThomasis. These are all our circuit judges. And then beginning here at the end, Judge Walter Green, who is with us, Alachua County Judge. Judge Tatum Davis is here. He serves in Bradford County. Judge Christine Van Voorst, one of our Alachua County judges. Judge Mitchell Bishop, who is in Union County. Judge Michon Rawls, also an Alachua County judge. And I understand Judge Bill Davis, did he make it? He's here? Oh, he's still in court. He may try to join us a little bit later. So we're appreciate all of our judges who are able to be present. As you just heard, some are not because they unfortunately were not able to get their calendars completely clear or to finish their work, so they're not able to be present, but we appreciate all of our judges who are here today. At this time, we are going to have the administration of the oath of office, and that will be presented by Judge Monica Brasington. And so, Judge Wright.
I'm going to turn this so we can maybe hear the microphone between the two of us. All right, so I'll ask you to raise your right hand, please. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, great. I, George Micah Wright.
I, George Micah Wright.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
That I will support, protect, and defend.
That I will support, protect, and defend.
The Constitution.
The Constitution.
And government of the United States.
And government of the United States.
And the state of Florida.
And the state of Florida.
That I am duly qualified.
That I am duly qualified.
To hold office.
To hold office.
Under the Constitution of the state.
Under the Constitution of the state.
And that I will well and faithfully perform.
And that I will well and faithfully perform.
The duties of circuit judge.
The duties of circuit judge.
Of which I am about to now enter.
Of which I am now about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to have some remarks to be made by the Honorable Brian Kramer, who is our elected state attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. If it pleases the court, I'd like to take the next few minutes of your time to tell you why I love George Wright. Now, let's be clear. I don't mean that I love him in that way. He is an incredibly handsome man, very dapper, but we can see clearly he is out of my league. I love George for the person that he is, the coworker that he is, the prosecutor that you were. I love you for all the things that you have done and that you will do for this community. And I love him because he is my brother in arms. I want to start by telling you that George is very, very smart. George has served many roles for us. One of the roles he has served for us very well is teacher and educator. George was responsible for years for talking about and teaching our lawyers the ethical responsibilities of a prosecutor. And I even use some of his material when I teach about the ethical responsibilities of a prosecutor. But that's very easy for George. George's depth and breadth of the law is something that he loves tremendously. He can tell you things about cases that you clearly never wanted to know, that mean nothing in the overall spectrum of what is going to happen. And when we present cases to the court, regular lawyers, not George, when we present cases to the court, we are hopeful that we can find some little snippet of law that just says what our point is. Even if that's not really what it stands for, we're just hoping they'll buy it most of the time. But that isn't George. George understands not only why the case exists, but why the case is before it exists. And he can tell you why the people who decided the cases in the way that they did. That's a depth of understanding that very, very few people have, and very, very few people would ever make the effort to understand. But George does, and he loves it. I want to tell you that I was on the JNC, and George came before us. And there's one of the things JNC does, they always ask a question that's like a law school question, right? And we had wonderful answers. All of the people who came before us gave great answers. But when George left, I said, oh, so that's the answer, right? Everybody gets it, but George gets it at a deeper level. And that's what he is. That's where he is when he was working for us. And that's where he's going to be when he's working on the bench. Now, it's not all good, I will tell you this. That brain is very, very powerful. And so one of the things in our office is, you got to write stuff down, man. Somebody might need to know this who's not you. But George doesn't need notes. And I would tell him, hey, George, the notes aren't for you. They're for us. Right? So George, and when I would work with George and we would try a case, I'd be like, hey, aren't you going to write some of this down? Aren't you going to read some stuff? Aren't you going to prepare? I need to see some worry on your face. We are going into a serious trial with potentially judges who, look over here. It's a murderer's row. It's George, let's be a little bit nervous about what's going on. And he's like, no, I got it. So he doesn't need the notes, but we need the notes. And that's also who George is. And George is very, very funny. And if you have ever been around George, what you know is that George approaches every part of life with humor. And to me, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Because in our business, you must make a choice. You can either laugh or you can cry. That's what our choices are. And George always chose to laugh. And he was a wonderful person in that regard because he would lift you up in that sense. And I'll just relay that, we're in a trial, okay? And George is doing cross-examination. He's doing direct examination. Sorry, my bad. And he comes back, and I said, George, can you ask a question that isn't leading? And he says, well, I can, but I don't see a reason to. Right? I'm like, I said, because we're on direct? Right? And that's who George is that even in that moment where you're in a really high-stress situation, his humor is what carries you through. So, George he is also a great guy. And I want to say that when he called me and said, I want you to speak at my investiture, I thought, well, that's a mistake. I mean, look, George, I've known Kreider since high school. He didn't ask me to speak at investiture, okay? Right? We all expect that your judgment will improve over time. So when he asked me to speak, I said, well, what's the best thing I could say about George? And I said, well, that's easy. That's the simplest question there is. It said he's married to Ashley. And I said, well, but can I really say that? I guess I just did. But that is the truth of the matter. That it matters that you have a partner in this life that you walk through life with who is strong. And Ashley, we are going to eat at some point, and I could spend the next 2 hours telling you about Ashley. If you don't know her, that's your loss, and you need to. But I will simply tell you that she is smart, and she is beautiful, and she is funny, and she is powerful. She is an amazing physician and mother. And having someone like that to walk through this life with you makes you better. It just does. And so, George, I love you because you are married to Ashley. But George is a wonderful prosecutor. He was a wonderful prosecutor. He would never make a plea offer. We're still kind of dealing with that. It's part of the job. But he would say, well, I want to see what they want to do. Right? And I was like, well, George, that's not how this works. Like, it's in the rules. You're going to provide discovery and make a plea offer. Well, we'll see. But I will tell you, even though he is humorous, even though he may do things his own ways at times, he is an amazing prosecutor. We were in a trial where we were seeking the death penalty against a man together. And George, at the same time, was prosecuting somebody for shooting that man's daughter. And he was able to balance both of those things, keep both of those things in line with each other. That is prosecution at a level that most people cannot attain. And George did that, and that means he understands what the priorities are, what's important in a case, how do we need to approach people, how do we need to speak to people, and that is exactly what you need to know as a judge. And George has all that. And George is a wonderful, wonderful co-worker, and he was with us. He is always willing to help. As I said, he did so much more for us than he was ever required to do. And understand, he did all of that while he carried the heaviest of caseloads, the most difficult of cases, involving the most difficult defendants and the most skilled defense attorneys, and still was able to help his coworkers, train us, keep us all laughing. George would come to your office, and when he was gone, you had laughed, you had a moment of joy, and having someone like that in your office is a blessing. And really, George is that person. And I also love George for the public servant that he is. We can all recognize that being a judge or being an assistant state attorney is not going to pay you what you could make in the private sector. And George, being the lawyer that he is, which is outstanding, he could make as much money as he wanted to make, but he's never chosen that path. He was a clerk for a judge before he came to us. Then he worked with us, and he held every job that pretty much that you could have in the office and did it exceptionally well. And part of being a public servant is knowing where you can best serve. And George knows where he can best serve. And he can best serve here with these fine jurists. And giving up that part of your life to serve the community is something that I love about George. Now, I do, because I have the floor, get to give you some advice. And so, George, what I would tell you is that what is very important about being a judge, being a lawyer, is having tremendous sincerity. And as soon as you learn to fake it, as well as these guys over here, you are going to be fantastic. I'm totally kidding. Grant all my motions. But what I do sincerely mean is this. We have a phenomenally good judiciary. And if you need look no further than the people who are sitting here to learn everything you need to know about the advice that I'm going to give you. And the first is listen more than you speak. I'm not the first to come up with this. And if you look at these guys, you know they listen. They listen, and they listen to understand. And that is my next piece of advice to you, is know the difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. We have poisoned you. We have trained you for the past 10 or whatever years you worked for us to listen to respond, which means you're closing off your part of your mind to accept and understand what this person is really trying to tell you. And it takes time to unlearn it. You need to take that time and unlearn it. These guys already know it. They know how to listen, to understand, to turn off that part of your mind that simply wants to shout back at the person. We trained you well. You are exceptionally good at it. Now it's time to stop. George, you will often be, as I have mentioned, the smartest person in the room. Don't ever tell anyone. Nobody wants to know. This, we're keeping it between ourselves, and this is as far as it goes. Because as a judge, people are subject matter experts. They're going to come before you, and they want to believe that they know more than you. They won't, but that's okay. It's okay to let them believe that they know more than you. And these judges do it all the time. Judge Green lets our lawyers believe that they're influencing him over sentencing. That has not happened in 25 years. But he lets them do it because they need to practice, right? It's just one example. I could point to many. Thank you. And George, keep your own counsel and let your attitudes be a surprise. When you speak, everyone should be surprised by what you say and by what you think, if you choose to speak at all. And that is what creates an environment of fairness in the courtroom, is that until it is over, we all have a fair chance. And if you speak in a way that shows one side you're on for them and the other side you're not, it's just not quite as fair. Advice is done. Finally, I would like to say that I love you because you are my brother in arms. Being a prosecutor can, in a way, be a lonely business. There is no one who really likes us. If you think about it, who likes us? Clearly not these guys, not after this speech, right? The defense bar, that's a no, clearly. Most of the time, we hope that the victims like us, but a lot of times, we're not doing what they want. We're always inconveniencing witnesses, and we disappoint the sheriff frequently. So no one really likes us, and you have proven to be the person who everybody wants on their team. You are the guy who is there, you are present, you are strong, you are physically strong, you're mentally strong, you are emotionally strong, you're smart in more ways than I have described here today. And you are, as your name implies, usually right. I am absolutely privileged to say that I have been your brother in arms. And I would say to you all, he is yours now. Take very good care of him. You do not yet know the asset that you have. You will, give him time, know that he is an incredible person and an incredible lawyer. I want to say thank you to Chief Judge for allowing me to roast your judges a little bit. To all of you guys for all you do, thank you so much. To the sheriff, thank you so much for keeping us safe and doing what you do. And to you, George and Ashley, I want to say thank you for inviting me to do this. Clearly, it will be the last time. But I am honored. And I want you to know that as I look out here and I see all these people who I know and they love you, that I am speaking not just for me. You have chosen me to do this, but I do it for them. And they feel exactly the same way that I do. They love you, they support you, and they are very, very proud of you, as am I. Thank you.
At this time, we'll have the presentation of the nameplate by the Honorable Denise Ferrero.
I have to decide how much of my speech I'm going to give. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm here not just for myself, but on behalf of the Florida Conference of Circuit Judges. I'll make sure he's on the video. I had to look at the nameplate earlier because today is a ceremonial investiture. He's actually been working since January 1st of 2021, which is the date he was commissioned. It feels like he's been here longer because he was appointed sometime in July, right?
June, I think.
June.
Yeah.
It's been June, yes. So he's been with us for a long time. I was speaking to his mentor judge yesterday, Judge Brasington, and she's been mentoring him since then, since June. We feel like you've been here longer than January, so we're happy. It feels like a lot longer than January. But he has been working hard with us since January 1st, and we're very happy to have him. And the Conference of Circuit Judges are all the circuit judges in the state of Florida, including the retired ones who are not practicing law. Okay, so it's a lot of circuit judges. If Judge Grebe was here, he could tell you exactly how many. I cannot tell you how many. We are in the 8th Circuit, as you know. We have 20 judicial circuits in Florida. And on behalf of all of the circuit judges in the state of Florida, today on your ceremonial investiture date, which is a long time coming, I present to you your plaque commemorating your commission date of January 1st, 2021. It is my honor to present this to you for your desk, and then hopefully one day people will come into your office again and see it. Congratulations. I was going to get a hug.
Judge Wright, I had just a few remarks I was going to sprinkle in. One of them has to do with my nameplate, which I received at my investiture, and it says on it, from the Conference of Circuit Judge. And I looked at that. I thought about seeing about getting that replaced, but there were one of two possibilities. One is that there was only one judge willing to actually sign on to the nameplate. I didn't really want to find that out. The other was that it would be a reminder to me always that people make mistakes. to be aware of that. Sometimes honest mistakes, inadvertent mistakes. That includes judges as well, to be aware of that, of your own ability to do so. That will be told to you many times by the appellate judges who are not represented here today from time to time. Hopefully it won't be often. I do recall my first reversal. I've not had many, so I would remind you to follow your instincts, no matter how bright and glib and persuasive the prosecutor may be, because even if he is the smartest person in the room, he could be wrong. So beware of that in your days to come. But we welcome you in our conference. At this time, we're going to have remarks from Jeannie Singer, who's retired Chief Assistant to the State Attorney's Office and one of our most celebrated and beloved attorneys in our circuit.
May it please the court?
Yes.
Familiar faces, members of the judiciary. Ooh. Permission to remove the mask.
Yes, please.
Before I get started, I see it's about 20 to 4. So, George, I think it's about time for you to walk around and eat your apple. Keeps the doctor away. Although for George, he wants the doctor to come on as much as possible, so. I know this is being videotaped, and the problem I have is that I'm retired now, as everyone knows, and I don't really much care about what people think. So, as
That's new?
As Judge Moseley said, my name is Jean Singer. I used to be a prosecutor here in the 8th Circuit for a number of years. I watched a lot of you all grow up and become judges. I see a lot of familiar faces there, as well as I see a lot of young people that I left just about 9 months ago, so it's good to see you all. I have known George Micah Wright, and I'm going to say Micah Wright because I love his middle name, Micah. George M. Wright. I've known him for just about 17 years. We're getting on 17 years now. George grew up the son of an Air Force colonel and his mom, William and Mary Wright, and I'd like to give them a hand and congratulate them. As his mom told me today, George was born on Homestead Air Force Base, and unfortunately, Hurricane Andrew took away the base, but maybe they'll put a plaque up there one day, George. That was your birthplace. As I said, George's dad was in the Air Force, and so George and his family traveled throughout the world during his growing up, and he's lived in very, very, very different places, and he's dealt with very diverse cultures, and he's learned how to get along with people that he may only know for a few years, and he might have to move on and meet new friends. And that's one of the reasons why what State Attorney Brian Kramer said about George is so true, and that is that he has learned how to listen and to cooperate with and to befriend and to care about people from all different walks of life. And that's a lot to be said for his parents, who did a terrific job in raising him, rearing him, and making him the man he is today. He attended high school. I'm the person, by the way, if you don't know it, I'm the one that's supposed to give you the history of George. I was probably supposed to go first, but Brian made George put him first because he didn't want to follow after me. So I'm giving you all of George's background, and then you can just remember what Brian said. George attended high school in Washington, D.C. I think his dad was stationed there during that time. And after that, he returned to Florida, which is actually the Wright's home base. That's where the Wright family is from. And George came here to attend the University of Florida undergraduate, and later, of course, his graduate studies. While he was in undergraduate school, he met the best person in the world. I have to agree with Mr. Kramer on this. She is just terrific. He met Ashley Hermanson, and they did fall in love, so much so that I understand that at one point George actually had to scrub a bathroom tile with Tide cleaner and a toothbrush to get it cleaned up before they made sure that they could leave the place clean enough for the next people to come in. Ashley was here also studying. They both went to school together. And in the fall of 2003, George started his studies at the University of Florida School of Law. I don't think I have to tell anyone here how smart George is. Brian has already told you that. Anyone who knows George knows how really smart he is. But as a law student, he really excelled in his ability to analyze issues, analyze facts, draw conclusions that were new, innovative, and that were always articulately presented. And come to find out that despite the fact that he doesn't take any notes and refuses to put any notes in the case file, he is an extremely articulate writer. And as such, he was invited to law review, and he advanced to the position of Galley's editor before he graduated. I personally met George in 2005 because I was an adjunct professor working with Judge Thomasis in the trial practice course, and George was a member of my class. And at that time, I got the opportunity to see what we all see in George, that glimpse of humor and joy for life, combined with a magnificent intelligence, terrific ability to communicate, and a passion for the law, which we all can say that as lawyers, that we had a passion for the law. Of course, Mr. Savone is not here today. He would tell you that he kind of glided through law school because he wasn't sure he had any passion for the law until he started practicing it. But George really did, at the time, excel in the academic nature of the law, in the study of the law itself. And that's why what Mr. Kramer said about he can tell you what a judge was thinking at the time decisions were made, what the cultural situation was, what the historic situation was, what the composition of the people who he was dealing with was. All those things he actually analyzes, knows, studies, and he likes it. And so he even those simple problems that we taught year after year after year, George would find some perspective that would make those trial problems seem real, seem more real. And his presentation was outstanding. I also learned a lot about George's sense of humor. I'm standing in front of Judge James Matthew Colaw. He could hit me with a rubber band right now if he wanted to. You don't have a rubber band down there, do you? Do you have a paper clip? I didn't know there could have been a funnier guy at the state attorney's office than James Matthew Colaw until George came. Here's the thing. Don't let them go in the same courthouse. He stays in the criminal courthouse. He stays in the civil courthouse. Where's my chief judge? I'm telling you. It will be, I like the word hijinks because I think it fits you both. It will be hijinks galore. It will be the Marx Brothers -1. It will be the Three Stooges -1. I mean, it will be scary. And by the way, Judge Colaw, watch your pistachio stash. Around 3:30, if he doesn't have an apple, you will have no pistachios. That's all I want to say about that. Well, George graduated the University of Florida School of Law, magna cum laude, of course, in 2006. He was promptly admitted into the Florida bar and started as a law clerk in the, what I like to say, the post office down the street. And he worked for the Northern District of Florida for several years. Ashley was in medical school. They married, and after, I think it was 2 years as a law clerk, George really wanted to get into the courtroom himself. He'd witnessed quite a bit of activity at the federal courthouse, but really wanted to do the work rather than sit back and write the opinions or help write the opinions on certain issues. So he did apply and come to serve as an assistant state attorney in 2008 with the Honorable William P. Cervone. And that's where we all got to really get to know him. All the people here that sit here now that know him so well, it's through his practice with us at that office. He honed his trial skills. One of the things I can say about George is knowing him from the time that he was in law school through the time that he came to join the state attorney's office, he developed a more substantive, more mature sense of fairness in the courtroom and in the justice system. He also had children, and children amaze us all by what they teach us. And the maturity that I saw in George that came after his children were born, and the pride that you have for your beautiful son and daughter. So well behaved, such good kids. It just abounded. There wasn't a day that George didn't have a photograph of Madeline at preschool, or I call him Chip. They never accepted Chip. They call him G2, but George too. Pictures all the time telling us how they are excelling, and we know they are because they're George's and Ashley's beautiful children. One of the things that I think Brian Kramer said that so impressed me was the fact that, believe it or not, as prosecutors, and so many of you were prosecutors, so you know, there is a time when prosecutors have to have a certain amount of courage in being able to tell folks, whether it's a defendant through his counsel or whether it's a victim and their family who have lost a loved one, that perhaps the criminal justice system is not going to resolve the issues that they have. It's certainly not going to recompense them or pay them or give them anything back from what they've lost. And that courage has to be developed. It is not something that you just have. You have to learn it. You have to practice it. It sometimes eats at you. It sometimes is what you take home at night and affects you. And I saw George develop that. And why that's important, and why we know that you know it's important, is that as the ultimate adjudicator, as the person that makes that last decision, the court, you have to have that courage. You have to have that courage. You have to have that internal will, that strength. And his years as a prosecutor, I think, gave him the opportunity to develop that. And it makes me proud to see that you're now at a place, George, where those decisions are going to happen. They're going to happen promptly. They're going to happen with a lot of reflection and a lot of deliberation. And you're not going to be afraid of why the decision is made. And that's one of the most important things that I think that I can offer as advice to you, is continue to develop that. George, believe it or not, is patient. George is kind. He's a good listener. We've heard all that from Brian. But really, I think what's most important for all of you to know is that you will really, really enjoy working with him, because he is able to make you laugh and make you feel good. And I saw David Margulies earlier today. Anyone who wants to know what it's like to feel good, talk to David Margulies, because George and David have a very unique relationship. And if you ever see George's eyes start to sparkle and his lips start to move up, Judge Colaw, and the lip starts to go up, It's doing it right now, I think. Watch out, because something's brewing. Hijinks. That's all I can say, hijinks. In closing, I want to say to George and his family, interestingly enough, and for the few folks, I see 2, I see 3, I see 4 perhaps, but I think, and maybe Judge Wilson Bullard, you are not the first Judge Wright to sit on the bench in Alachua County, Florida. In 1974, Margaret Kathleen, we knew her as Kathy Wright, was sworn in as the first female county judge in Alachua County, Florida. And I think some of you recall her because after she sat on the bench between 74 and 78, she retired from the bench and went back to practice at the Public Defender's Office here in the 8th Circuit. I see Judge Thomas is nodding. I think you might recall her. One of the most significant things that I remember about Judge Wright is that, first of all, she was also one of the smartest people we ever had on the bench. But also, she was deliberative, and above all, George, she was ethical. She made sure that everyone was treated fairly, everyone was heard, everyone had an opportunity to be heard, and that the law was considered and followed in every case that she handled. And George, I see in you a reflection of her, and I hope that you can stand by those same wonderful characteristics. Be deliberative, be patient, be kind, and be fair, and remember the ethics and those morals that your parents taught you when you were young. So in closing, I'd like to say that Alexander Hamilton, I always have to have a quote. It's kind of like doing an opening statement. Have to have a quote. Oh, who taught me that? Judge Colaw taught me that.
Are you going to steal mine?
You have a quote? I'm only doing that, Judge Colaw, because when Judge Moseley introduced everyone, he didn't introduce you, so I felt like you needed to.
I noticed it too, Jeannie.
So Alexander Hamilton said, "The first duty of society is justice, and we who know you, George, know that you will do well. There is no question about that. We wish and hope..."
That's not a reflection at all of how you're doing.
No, but they don't have a cry room in the courthouse. Now, Judge Moseley would understand what I said there when I said the cry room, but they don't have a cry room in the courthouse. Now you really knocked me off. It's like objecting. It's like objecting. Oh, I do want to say one other thing. He does know how to ask a direct question. Judge Thomas says, explain to Mr. Kramer that we do teach how to ask a direct question. He does know how to ask a direct question. He just knew that somebody wasn't objecting to his leading question, so he just took advantage of that. Is that correct? Is that right? Anyway, this is what Alexander Hamilton said. He said the first duty of society is to do justice, and we all know that George Michael Wright will do that, but we also know, and we also want you, George, to do good. Do good for this community, do good for the state, do good for your family, and with that, congratulations.
As you've already heard, this is ceremonial enrobing of the authority of circuit judge for Judge Wright, that he took the oath of office and was appointed by the governor, and actually has been working as judge for some time. Not only is he a brilliant jurist, to give you some idea of, I think, just the kind of quality that he brings. He started working as soon as I think the governor called him and told him that he was going to receive the appointment. He began preparing himself to fulfill this role. He was here, I think, maybe more than many of us are here who are actually on the bench already trying to learn from his fellow judges. I can remember walking into courtrooms or looking sometimes on open court, and he would be there listening, watching, observing in order to be able to be prepared for the responsibility that he was taking. And as you've heard, he's done all of these wonderful years preparing at the state attorney's office. So as has happened with many of us, so immediately we put him in family civil to handle those cases. He is handling a division of family law, and you do need courage indeed to be fulfilling that. But I hear nothing but great things about the work that he is doing, and we're delighted about that. And now, as part of that ceremony, as you see, as is customary for us in the attire that we wear, there will be a presentation of the robe on behalf of the 8th Judicial Circuit Bar Association by the president of our bar, Evan Gardiner, at this time, and then his family will assist.
Thank you, Judge. May it please the court? Yes. I know Judge Wright's probably itching to put the... If he'd like to, yeah. I know you're probably itching to put the robe on for the first time, so I'll promise to be brief. But distinguished judges, members of Judge Wright's family, distinguished guests, and friends, as president of the 8th Judicial Circuit Bar Association, it is my great privilege to be here today as we formally invest Judge George M. Wright into the judiciary of the 8th Judicial Circuit. Investiture is a word rooted in Latin that literally means in robe. In its original meaning, investiture was robing of a new office holder in garments that symbolized power. Today, it is a ceremonial custom whereby individuals are invested with office. In this case, it is the office of the judge and all the authority, duties, and responsibilities that come with the position. Keeping in with this custom, judges are presented with a black robe at their investiture. The judicial robe is one of the most iconically recognizable symbols of the legal system. The black robe worn by judges symbolizes the responsibility to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law, their honor and authority, and a judge's neutrality and humility as servants of the people. Our judges and courts each day strive to ensure the fair, impartial, and independent administration of the court and justice and administration of justice, that all citizens and attorneys are treated with respect, dignity, and fairness. We entrust them to make some of the most important decisions that protect our liberties and our fundamental rights that are guaranteed to us through the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Judges ensure that everyone receives a fair shake in the application of our law. I am proud that I'm an attorney in the 8th Judicial Circuit. Throughout the state of Florida, the 8th Circuit is known for its professionalism, and our esteemed judiciary is a large portion of what makes the 8th Circuit so great and the professionalism that is upheld. I'm confident that Judge Wright will continue to uphold the standard, and I'm further confident that Judge Wright will perform the duties of the office with honor, professionalism, neutrality, humility, and virtue. Congratulations to you, Judge Wright, on your elevation to the circuit bench. On behalf of the local bar, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to the judiciary and present you with this black robe.
Now the family will please come and assist Judge Wright. You may want to move your coat. too believe that this is a great circuit to work in, and I've always been impressed and very honored to be serving alongside my fellow judges, the collegiality that we share and which we are happy to welcome George into. But you notice in the midst of the joy that's being shared, some very serious admonitions as well, to be taken seriously, not only by Judge Wright, but by all of us who have this privilege. To my left, I did have some great things that I was going to save for just this occasion, but now, just to skip that, we have Circuit Judge James Colaw, who is sitting here for a purpose, not merely because we didn't have room for him out there. He is in our program, if you will note, and at this time, Circuit Judge Colaw will do a welcome to the bench.
Well, good afternoon. Chief Judge Moseley, my fellow judges, elected officials, members of the bar, and family and friends of Judge George Wright. May it please the court.
Yes.
Judge Wright, I'm honored by your invitation to do your welcome to the bench remarks. And I promise that I'm going to strive to be brief. If there's anything I have learned over the past almost decade of investitures that I have attended as a judge, I've seen the backlash that Judge Browning has received for the length of any remarks he's been invited to give. And for those of you who don't know, Judge Browning is very, very thorough and long in his remarks. And I notice he's not present with us today, and I don't know if that's because he simply wasn't available or there's been some ban. So, we will know if there's a ban on lengthy remarks if at the next investiture, neither Judge Browning nor State Attorney Kramer are present. Brian, I'm kidding. I love you. All right. So, in an abundance of caution, to be safe, I'm going to strive to be, as I said, brief. When I think back almost 9 years ago now to my investiture, I didn't need these, and I had a full, thick mane of hair. At least that's how I remember it. And I think Judge Kreider supports that because he had the same at his. So this is one of the things you have to look forward to. Judge Wright, I know your beautiful family is excited and proud of you and of your accomplishments, and we are all, as a judiciary, excited for you and excited to have you join our judicial family. I look out in the crowd as everyone has been speaking, and I see a lot of friends out there in the audience, and as I get older and life gets busy, it seems like the only time I see a lot of you is at ceremonies like this, ceremonies that are happy like this, and unfortunately at times ceremonies that are sad and somber. But to everybody who is here on behalf of the judges, we are all grateful that you have been able to attend today and celebrate Judge George Wright with us. As you've learned a little bit about Judge Wright and his family today, I think Ms. Singer mentioned it, Judge Wright, both Judge Wright's grandfather and father served our country in uniform in the military, and personally, I believe we all owe a collective debt to all the men and women who have served or are serving our country in uniform. So to you, sir, and to anyone else present with us today who has served, thank you for your service. To all, I think whether you've served or not served, I think we all can agree military service instills strong values, selfless service, devotion and loyalty, very desirable attributes that it instills in those who serve, but it also instills those same attributes in the family of those who serve. So Judge Wright, as you moved around the country and the world as you were growing up, being part of a military family with your father. What you didn't know and what you had no way of really knowing at that time was those decisions by your father and his father before him to serve God, country, and family. Those decisions were preparing you. They were preparing you for who you are today and where you are today. So to everyone with us, if you've not met Judge Wright or Judge Wright's family, his parents, his wife Ashley, his daughter Madeline, or George II, then at the reception, take some time to meet them, because they are people who have helped shape who Judge Wright is today. I think it's the people, however, that don't know Judge Wright who are going to be most happy about his appointment to the circuit bench. People in the Eighth Circuit who either by misfortune or circumstances find themselves in his courtroom today, tomorrow, and hopefully, Judge, for a very long time. It's going to be those folks who are going to have the benefit of your experience, your knowledge, your common sense as you find the right solutions for those cases and the people that are before you in those cases. The knowledge that everyone has spoke of, Mr. Kramer, Ms. Singer, about how bright you are, the knowledge you've acquired through your studies, and the knowledge that you'll continue to acquire through weekly reading of case law updates and other activity. And that's all the easy part, Judge Wright. To be the kind of judge that the Eighth Circuit expects, you're going to have to go beyond the knowledge and seek wisdom. And wisdom is not something that will be given to you. It's not acquired through books or study. You have to search for her. And she reveals herself to those who seek her, and it will be the wisdom that allows you to apply your knowledge of the law to the facts of the cases and to the people who come before you. In James 1:5, it says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." At the start of your term in office, Judge Wright, you take an oath. Every public servant takes that, and you took one. And deliberately, you take that oath. You often place your hand on the Bible, and you often take that oath in front of your colleagues, your family, and often citizens of the 8th Judicial Circuit. And I'm reminded of 2 Chronicles 19:6-9 that says, "Consider carefully what you do, because you are not judging for man, but for the Lord, who is with you whenever you give a verdict. Now let the fear of the Lord be upon you. Judge carefully, for with the Lord there is no injustice or partiality or bribery. You must serve faithfully and wholeheartedly in the fear of the Lord." So, Judge Wright, my advice to you is to view your oath as solemn, as binding, and as mission defining. When you are seated up here, Judge Wright, as you already have been, it's been mentioned, you've been on the bench presiding over cases for almost this entire year. When you are seated in your position as a judge, listen with curiosity. As Mr. Kramer alluded to, don't listen just with the intent to reply. Speak with honesty and act with integrity. This is going to be where your preparation, your experience, your patience, and your common sense will be appreciated the most. Now, Judge, despite your best efforts, expect criticism. And one side is not going to prevail, as you already are well aware in your work on the bench. And folks may cast your decisions as not well considered, or worse at times, as some sign of bias or prejudice. Always remember, you can't control the way people interpret your thoughts or your rulings, but you can always control the words and the tones with which you choose to convey them. Now, I'm glad Ms. Singer stopped short on the Alexander Hamilton, because this is good stuff, Judge. So stick with me. I love this. Our nation was founded on principles of ordered liberty and justice, and our founders recognized that it's the impartial, expeditious administration of justice in the state courts that would be the cement in the foundation of our country. And Alexander Hamilton, in Federalist Paper 17, wrote the following concerning the state courts, saying that the ordinary administration of criminal and civil justice, what takes place in these courtrooms every single day, contributes more than any other circumstance to impressing upon the minds of people, the citizens in our communities of the Eighth Circuit, affection, esteem, and reverence toward the government. I don't know if you're going to go that far, Ms. Singer. I interrupted you and it worked. So you stopped short. Thank you. But Judge Wright, you're now an heir, has been alluded to the best traditions of the judiciary of the 8th Judicial Circuit. It's a proud tradition that's resulted in our bench being one of the most admired, even envied among Florida's circuits. And you, as all of us in the 8th Circuit, are fortunate to inherit a system which has been so well served and significantly improved by the great leaders who have preceded you. That is most certainly a blessing. And I do recognize that every day you're going to get sage advice from people who are much more capable of giving you good advice than me. But I remind you that when you are in doubt, look to the best who have preceded you. Seek and be guided by their advice and their example. So in the late evenings when you're walking the halls of the courthouses in our circuit, regardless of which of the counties that may be in, and you contemplate the tough decisions you'll have, be sure that there in the shadows with you is a Judge David Glant or a Judge Johnny Hobbs. And when you get frustrated, and you surely will, never forget the first-rate temperament that made a Judge Pete Sieg or a Judge Elsie Sanders or a Judge Robert Cates beloved. And when you think that you have some hurdles in front of you, when you think there are some doors that are hard for you to open, I want you to remember the triumphant life of Judge Mickle. And always remember that you have all of your brothers and sisters in your new family. Many of them are here in the courtroom with you today, Judge Wright. And I promise you that this family will always be available to give you their best if and whenever you need it. So the expectations we all have for you are no more, no less than what we expect of ourselves. And I am confident you're going to meet those expectations and make us all proud. I'm going to leave you with my final piece of advice. And it's advice that was given to me by Judge Tim Browning at my welcome to the bench. And before that, given to him by Judge Joe Smith at his. And it's important to remember that the quality of advice isn't necessarily tied to how long it takes to give it, but rather to its content. And this advice is from the Old Testament. It's Micah 6:8, and I'm going to paraphrase. And what does God require of you? To do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So God bless you, Judge Wright. God bless your family. God bless the people of the 8th Circuit. And on behalf of Chief Judge Moseley and the entire judiciary, congratulations, and I invite you to join us at the bench.
Thank you all so much. I'm so grateful to share this day with everyone. It's like a family reunion. I get to see so many friendly faces, and really I just got so many memories coming back. I was talking with Detective Yaeger over there, where I've shared what I thought was going to be my last moment on earth when we found ourselves flying over rural Vermont in a single engine Cessna. And I thought, I made a poor decision that's the last face I get to see before I leave this earth. I'm glad to see so many friends. I'm glad that Rich Chang managed to be an hour late for my investiture. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you stayed true to yourself.
Been here the whole time.
And Judge Nylon told me before I came up here, he said, this is a special day because It's the one day other than your funeral in which everyone gets to say nice things about you, and you get to be there and hear it all. And it is true, and Judge Nylon, thank you so much for all you've done for me. You've given me great advice throughout these many, many months. I really am proud to be here in the 8th Circuit because I've had the opportunity to practice with in other circuits, either through governor's assignments or meeting with other attorneys, and the lawyers here every day handle some of the most difficult cases with courtesy and with dignity and with humanity. And I just think about how I've had cases where emotions can run high and the stakes can be even higher, but even after a grueling trial, I still always end up with nothing but respect for the opposing counsel, because just because you fight hard doesn't mean you have to throw low blows or cheap shots, and I've never experienced that from any of the lawyers in this bar. I think that we hold ourselves to such high ethical standards, and I'm proud of all the lawyers who are here and who serve every single day. It's an honor to sit among all these judges here. I've worked with many of you when you were at the state attorney's office. Judge Penna had his office right across the hall from me. Judge Kreider was at the state attorney's office when I was there. Judge Bishop was in a different circuit, but we handled a case together.
You remember that?
He was in a suit. He was with an attorney from Lake City who was in a suit, and then I think you thought I must have been like a homeless person or something wandering in.
You look like you've come from the golf course.
The golf course. I don't golf, but so they were quizzical of me at first. So hopefully I made a better impression after that. And so I really never expected to be here for many reasons. One, I never really thought about even going to law school. I didn't know what I was going to do, and finished up college. I was an English major, and Ashley had another year to graduate, so I had to figure out what to do for a year. So I tried to apply for jobs reading books, and nobody was hiring me. And Ashley's dad was very concerned because he said, so is George going to be unemployed for the rest of his life? And I knew what I had, so I had to make the father-in-law happy, and I said, law school, that's 3 years. That'll buy me some time. And I was always jealous because there were these people you knew in law school who knew what they wanted to do. They knew they were going to be civil litigators. They knew they were going to go work at the public defender's office, and I had no idea. And so luckily in my third year, I was selected by the Chief Justice Parente of the Florida Supreme Court to be her intern. And that really sort of changed my entire life, because for the first time, I really discovered what my purpose was. I loved working in the judicial system, and it was just a fascinating experience. And so I applied and was selected to be a law clerk for Judge Maurice Paul. And I learned a lot. And specifically what I learned is that Judge Paul was appointed for life. He had been working for probably 20 years at that point. He didn't have to worry about elections. He didn't have to worry about people's opinions, but he was still probably one of the most courteous, kind, polite, and he was a true gentleman to everyone who came in front of him. And he was humble. He had 2 assassination attempts on his life, and he still walked to work every day down the streets of Gainesville and walked through the front door of the federal courthouse, which at that time was also the post office. So here is this federal judge passing people who are buying stamps and trying to mail packages, and he would take the elevator up. And he was also funny. He showed me around my first day, and he showed me his bench, and he showed me how there was armor plating, and it was very fancy. And then he showed me where I was sitting, and there was this little balsa wood divider. And he said, it takes an act of Congress to replace me. I get one of you every year. And so when I finished up my clerkship, I was very sad. I loved the work. It was fascinating. Unfortunately, I said Judge Paul was kind of old. He didn't know how to use computers. So instead of Wikipedia, he had 2 law clerks who would look things up for him all the time. And it was in downtimes you would have moments where he would say, how come when a placeholder puts his knee on the field to hold the ball, it's not considered a down. Look up that rule for me. I want to read that. And so suddenly you would have two law clerks looking up obscure football rules. And as I was leaving, I asked him for advice. I said, what should I do? I one day want to become a judge. What do I do? And his advice was, well, you got to be a good lawyer. And he said, if you want to be a judge, you need to spend as much time in the courtroom as possible. You need to make yourself the best lawyer you can be. And I was at a crossroads because the nature of that job, I was getting offers from major law firms, and they were offering me more money than I've ever seen. And I had a friend who was leaving the state attorney's office, and I met with Mr. Cervone, and he gave me a counter offer that I couldn't refuse, and $38,000 a year. And I said, now that's a sizable chunk of salary right there. And so I took a huge pay cut to work at the state attorney's office, but it was invaluable. It was worth it. And I remember saying, I'll do this for like a year or two, but I love the work, and I love the people I worked with. I love the people at the public defender's office and the private defense bar, and I became good friends with people who otherwise I would never have met. And I remember walking a victim back to her car after trial, and I was chatting with the defense attorney, and she was shocked. She goes, "You guys are friendly after that?" And I said, "We're good friends. We can separate, what's in the courtroom and what's outside." And so it's been a great experience, and I've been very lucky to have so many judges who have been so helpful, because working on the judicial side, I thought I knew a lot of what I was going to be expecting. I've been behind the scenes for several years, but the practical aspects have been just so helpful, from Judge Ferrero giving me the best advice when we were about to swear in the new class at GPD, and I'm about to go swear in Captain Finelli, and she leans over and she says, "Don't trip on your robe." And it's true, because you don't think about it, but you get measured for a robe standing up, but then you spend all your time sitting down, and then the robe pulls around your feet, and you lose a little bit of the majesty of the court when you stand up and then you fall down the stairs here. Suddenly people don't think you're as all-powerful or knowing at that time. And Judge Davis helping me out, where I'm sitting in the courtroom looking at all these buttons, and I realize I don't know how to go on the record. And he comes over and shows me what button to push. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Judge Brasington, who's been an amazing mentor judge, who gets these extremely lengthy text messages from me, and is always wonderful with your help and your advice. Thank you, Judge Colaw, for welcoming me to the bench. I did have an ulterior motive for asking you. I knew that many of my friends from the state attorney's office were going to be here. I knew this would guarantee that you could not set a trial today, and they would at least have one day off.
Well done.
So, but I am going to try to keep this short, because I get nervous when I see all these eligible jurors in front of Judge Colaw, and I fear he may try to impanel you all and begin a trial right now. So Judge Colaw and I worked briefly together at the state attorney's office, and in fact, the very first trial I ever worked on was with you. You have no idea, do you? No. You have no clue. So I work, well, when you try 170 jury trials as a prosecutor, I'm sure they all blend together. But I remember Judge Colaw because he was an amazing prosecutor. He had just this amazing memory where he could look at a sheet of jurors' names and instantly memorize it, and go up there and flawlessly talk to the juror. And then I'm sitting there with their names, and I'm still messing it up, and I can't figure that out. And so the reason why I asked you to give the welcome to the bench is because not only did we work together at the state attorney's office, but I've been practicing in front of you, I think, since you took the criminal bench in 2016. And appearing in front of somebody like Judge Colaw can be terrifying because you think you know your case until he starts asking you questions about it. And it becomes clear that how does this man know more about a case that I filed and took testimony on? He's asking about depositions that may have happened 6 months ago. And to practice in front of Judge Colaw, you have to be on top of your game. And more than that, besides the case, he knows the law. You can't try to squeak by a bogus argument with him. You can't try to play hard and fast with the rules because he's going to call you every time. And I feel that I was a better lawyer because I got to practice in front of you because I knew that I couldn't show up and give you a B or a B plus because you knew that at the end of the day, we are here to be ministers of justice, that all the folks that are here are deserving of protection of the Constitution, and you held everybody to that standard. And I want to thank you for the influence you've had on me, and also just I appreciate it that much more now that I'm in this position, because when you're a lawyer, you show up, you may have 1 or 2 cases. Well, you forget that the judge is up there all day, and all these cases come up, and suddenly you have 40 or 50 cases, and Judge Colaw knows each and every one of those cases, forwards and backwards. And I think that shows your commitment to ensuring that every single person knows that they're not a case number. They are a person who is afforded and accorded all the dignity that they should be. And thank you for that. I know that I was in trouble asking Brian Kramer to be up here. I love you too, Brian. He loves an audience, and he loves to get a laugh, and he knows that he's known me long enough to get a laugh. I first met Brian when he was in private practice. He was opposing counsel. Then he became a division chief, and ultimately executive director, and now the state attorney. My one regret is I never got to be in the same division as Brian. And for those of you who don't know, when you're a general felony attorney, you can be in court from 9 in the morning till sometimes past 5, and it can be kind of grueling. And maybe you'll stick a granola bar in your briefcase. You'll find some way to make it through the day, but not Brian. Brian had multiple drawers of snacks, some of the best snacks you've ever. I think he had a roast beef carving station set up at one time. It was great. And so anytime I had a case in here, I always knew that I was not going to go hungry. And that's because Brian always made sure to look out for his attorneys. He knew that they were going to be there all day. And he wanted to make sure that, they had anything they needed. And that's how he treated the job as an executive director. He cared about his people, and just thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And I always remember that when I came to you for some advice, and I had this tough legal issue, and I came to Brian. He gave me this great advice. So I went and I followed that advice to a T. And then there I was in Mr. Chavone's office, and Stacy Scott was there, Jeannie Singer was there, and they were both, everyone's very upset with me. And they were thinking, what were you thinking doing that? I remember I came to Brian, I said, Brian, I did what you said. And he goes, whoa. He goes, your opening salvo was to drop the A-bomb. You probably shouldn't have done that. And so despite where the advice is coming from, I definitely learned to sometimes question the advice before I follow it. But again, like Brian said, I think we tackled a case that had been lingering for about a decade. It was sort of a prosecutorial relay where every prosecutor who got it ran with it long enough before they left the office so they could drop the baton for someone else to pick it up, and we were able to cross the finish line with that, and I was always impressed because at that time Brian was the executive director. He was running a campaign. He had handling multiple dockets, and he put together a masterful prosecution. I learned so much from you. Thank you for everything. And of course, Jeannie, thank you for being my teacher, for being my mentor, for being my friend, for being a part of my family. There's so many reasons why I am proud to know you and to have worked with you. If you ever had a problem and you came to Jeannie, she would immediately drop everything and focus on you and make sure that she could help you in any way. Unlike Brian, you could always trust her advice because she's brilliant, she's hardworking, she's tenacious, and above all, she's ethical. And the one thing that I always respected about her is that she never tolerated anything except for the utmost integrity for those who worked at the state attorney's office. And I was always so proud to work there because it was never about numbers. It was never about metrics or image. It was only focused on one thing, which is making sure that we did justice and whatever that may entail. And I'm so proud to know Jeannie because over the years she's been a vocal advocate for not only women in the profession but young girls. And I was there when she was receiving an award and gave a very impassioned speech about why we should ban the word bossy when talking about young girls. And as the father of a young girl myself, I just feel that this world is a better place for my daughter because of everything that you fought your whole life for. And that, I remember when, I was starting my family and you told me when you started your family there wasn't even maternity leave. And that I think the world is a better place because you have fought so hard to make it that way. And thank you for all of that. As I was transitioning to the bench, Judge Nylon probably gave me the best advice that I heard, which was, I was scared because I never handled family law before. I've done some civil work, I've done criminal work, I've done lots of other stuff, I've done probate, but I've never handled a family law case. And he said, you're married, you got kids, that's all you need to know, you'll figure out the rest. And it turned out to be really good advice because when you're a parent, there's all these things you don't think about, right? You're waking up your kids and making breakfast and driving them to school and then having a parent-teacher meeting. You're taking your kids to the doctor. You have to go to another birthday party. You have to arrange a play date. You put on the same movie you've seen for a millionth time. And you just sort of take it as a given. But then you're sitting in a family law case and you're hearing somebody answer all those questions. And then someone goes 0 for 3 on his children's birthdays, and you start to think maybe he's not the incredible father he claims to be. And just the experiences of being a dad and being a father, and your advice has proven true day in and day out that the law is easy, but the life experience is critical. Thank you for all that you've done for me, Judge Nylon, and helping me transition to the bench. And thank you for my wonderful judicial assistant, Anita. She specifically asked that I don't single her out or make everyone look at her. Do you have that speech prepared that I asked you to? And as I was thinking about today and thinking about the advice Judge Nylon gave me, I was thinking about how much being a parent has shaped my life, which is that there are things that you have to do, the rote, boring things, the shopping for groceries and laundry and all those things that are a given, but then there's those things that you don't even realize make a difference in your children's lives. And I think about when my daughter was about to turn 3, we took her to Disney World for the first time, and it was cliche, but it was a magical day because it had been raining a little bit. There was nobody there. Crowds were empty, and she got to meet every princess that she wanted to meet. She got to go on every ride she wanted to go on. And it was so slow that at one point, Aladdin and Jasmine decided to play hide and seek with her. And so at the end of the day, we're on the bus riding back, and I felt good as a dad. I'm like, I knocked it out of the park, everything. And I asked her what was the best part of her day, and she said, when you let me jump in the puddles and splash. And I was like, well, I could have done that at home for a lot cheaper. But then I thought, that's one of those times where it's easy to say no, because I forgot to bring a pair of socks and forgot to bring some shoes, but to her that meant the whole world, and I didn't even think of it at the time, and it made me think about how just in all of our lives, even a small act of kindness can have a lasting impact on people in ways that we don't always know or appreciate. And made me think about my own childhood, because I think that one of the reasons why I have such a wonderful marriage to my wife Ashley is because I got to grow up with my parents. And one of the greatest gifts I had, and I see this every day, is that I had two parents who loved each other and who loved me, and I got to grow up in that household. And unfortunately, we all see every day that is a gift that not every child gets to have. And I got to grow up with the gift of my dad, who only said nice things about my mom. And I remember throughout, he always told me, he goes, your mom is way smarter than I am. And the advice he gave me was, make sure whoever you marry, that she's smarter than you. That's the most important thing you can have in a wife. And it really stuck with me, because I found a wife, she's beautiful and she's kind and she's all those things that people said, but she is absolutely brilliant. And I remember when we met in college, she was a math and biochemistry major. We did not meet in class. So Ashley's math classes were these things, I don't know, they were called like topology. Her math didn't have numbers, right? They were all letters. I don't know how that works. My math was called math. And I remember being so bad at it that I failed a statistics lab because we had to bring in a bag of peanut M&Ms to use as a sample size. And the only instruction was, don't eat your M&Ms. Well, it was right before lunch, and so what am I going to do? Not eat the M&Ms. And my TA was very unsympathetic to my arguments of entrapment, that you can't have M&Ms in front of you before lunch and not eat them. But despite all my failings at math, Ashley still agreed to marry me. I'm so lucky to be able to share my life with you, Ashley. You are my best friend. You are an amazing wife. You're an incredible mom, and I love you. And then our two kids are growing up to be incredible people, as you may have witnessed. It is so interesting being a parent, because you see that your kids are such a blend of you. And so George is, hi George. He is such a kind and caring and empathetic person. He has such a good heart. And these are all qualities that make Ashley such a good doctor. There's nobody more caring and empathetic than Ashley. And I remember George loves animals, and we were walking after Hurricane Elsa blew through, and we're walking through the neighborhood, and he had his umbrella, and he saw that there was a butterfly in the grass that had its wings wet. So he ran over there with an umbrella and was trying to help it out. And I was just so moved. He's such a kind boy. And then my daughter Malin is fearless. She's brilliant. She's funny. She's 8, but I'm already way too uncool for her. Now, you do realize I'm on YouTube now, right? Do I go up a notch because of that? Okay. So I was walking Malin to class one day, and she doesn't want to be seen with me in front of her friends. And I went to hug her, and she ran to the door, and the teacher was like, Madeline, go hug your dad. And she stopped, and she looked at me, and she smiled. And then she looked at her teacher, and she goes, that is not my father. She said, that man has been tricking my mom for many years into believing that I'm the father, but no, he's not. So So anyway, after I talked to the school resource officer, and I just started laughing because that was one of the funniest things I ever heard. And Judge Nyland, like you said, you're right. If you can handle that, if you can roll with the punches of being a parent, you can handle any curveball thrown at you in a family law case. So I am so grateful to serve you all as a judge here in the 8th Circuit. And it's hard not to think back at all the people who have shaped me, who have made me who I am here today. And I was thinking about my very first class in law school at 8:30 on a Monday, sitting in Professor Little's torts class. And he was talking about some old British case of somebody finding a snail in a ginger beer bottle. And it was discussing the concept of negligence. And in that, he was talking about the parable of the Good Samaritan. We all know, and in the book of Luke, a lawyer is questioning Jesus, and he says, what is the path to eternal life? And Jesus says, what does the law say? And the lawyer says, to love thy God with all thy heart, and to love thy neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says, that's correct. And the lawyer, being a lawyer, wants a definition, says, who is my neighbor? And Jesus' response was in parable form, and he tells the story that we all know of a man walking the road to Jericho when he is attacked by thieves who beat him, rob him, leave him in a ditch to die. And a priest walks by, sees him, crosses the road, and keeps on walking. And the Levite sees him, crosses the road, keeps on walking. Finally, the third man, the Samaritan, sees this person and feels pity and treats his wounds and takes him to an inn. And at the end, Jesus asks the lawyer, which of these three seems to be a neighbor? And the lawyer answers, he who showed mercy. And Jesus said, go and do likewise. And this is a story I think we all learned as kids. It's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I was thinking about it recently because I was thinking more about the actions of the first two men, like the priest and the Levite, who there were two men who saw pain, who saw suffering, and decided to walk past it. And it seems like, we have been, I think all of us, a little bit guilty of how we treat our neighbors. We are commanded to love our neighbors, but what struck me is that this parable says that the opposite of love isn't hate, but indifference. That with so much going on in the world now, it's so easy to disconnect and to choose to feel nothing, to be indifferent. And empathy fatigue is a real issue in all of our lines of work. We see the same tragedies repeated over and over, and it seems like the only way forward is cut off our feelings. But that is our challenge, which is to be able to feel the humanity in all of us, that we are all people worthy of love. And I think, again, it makes me think about my daughter splashing in puddles. It's so easy to say no, just focus on what you have to do to get through the day. But small acts of kindness can make a huge difference on a person's life. As part of the job that we all do, we meet people from all parts of society, and we learn that there are people who may seem fine on the outside who are walking around with hidden tragedies inside of them. You might meet with a law enforcement officer who just came from a call where he or she had to witness something unspeakable, and then they had to clear the call and move on to the next. Or you might meet with a physician who tried their best and literally had a person's heart in their hand, but weren't able to bring them back. And we all have these moments in life where, despite whatever tragedy or trauma we're facing, we just have to go on with our everyday life like nothing is wrong. And I think that in those moments, a small act of kindness, a small word to let them know that you care about them, that you view them as a human, it can have immeasurable difference in someone's life. And by the same token, if you, just a small cruelty can be devastating. I think back to one of my cases where there was a victim who was homeless, and he saved up all his money, and he bought a suit for trial because he told me, I want the jury to believe me. And if they see me that I'm homeless, they're not going to see me as a person, and they're not going to believe me. I want them to know that I'm a human. It was a terrible suit, but he felt so proud in it. And I know that sometimes there's a tendency as judges to chastise people who maybe are not dressed to our standards, but sometimes it's a victory just for people to show up. And I think one of the things I hope I can do is be aware of the courtesy and the dignity that every person who comes before our court deserves. So I certainly hope I can get the basics right as a judge, what the law is, applying the law to the facts, obtaining the right results. But most of all, I hope I can avoid falling into that trap of indifference, because I think that is something that we all are in danger of. I hope that I can treat every person who comes into court as just that, not a case or a number, as a person who is deserving of the opportunity to be heard, to receive justice, and to be given the same rights as anyone else under our Constitution. I hope I can be a judge worthy of your expectations. I hope you all can show mercy on me as I learn to be a better judge, and I hope I can go and do likewise. Thank you all.
Once again, want to thank everyone for being present today. There is, I believe, a reception that is going to be out in the hall, if I remember where it's been set up. But I also want to take just a moment. If you look around, you see all our deputies, you see our court staff. Whatever we do, always the success of it depends upon all of those individuals. Blanche Woods has been heading this up in a cast of thousands. And so thank you all for being present and allowing us to be able to do this relatively smoothly because of all that you do. Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, yes. What people generally are thrilled to have judges say, court is adjourned.
All rise. Court is adjourned.